Welcome back to the channel. This is Scaling for Success, and we are here today with AJ. And AJ is amazing. He and I have had lots of conversations about operations and how it works in tandem with marketing in order to bring in profitability, which we absolutely always love.
Yep.
And I think he really likes the systems and the processes as much as I do, and some of the numbers, which we're going to talk about today. But before we do, AJ, why don't you tell people about yourself?
Yeah, sure. So I run an e-commerce marketing agency that specializes in strategic marketing. What that essentially means is we help people understand what their goals are, and then we help them build a roadmap between where they are and what they're trying to achieve.
I love it. And I'm a big fan of this story, which originated, first time I heard it actually from EOS. And so kudos over to the Entrepreneur Operating System.
Yep.
They were talking about how NASA, one of my favorite things, I'm a space nerd, but they were talking about how the shuttle lifts off from Florida. It's planned to go to the International Space Station, and somehow it always manages to get to the International Space Station, but ultimately 95% of the time it's actually off course. But they know that they're slightly off course, and they make their adjustments because they're following the metrics. They're following the numbers. Marketing has a plethora. I have never seen so many KPIs and so many metrics and so many numbers. Oh my gosh, what do we want to track today? Because I can track anything.
Well, we can track ROAS, CPC, CAC.
I don't know what those mean. That's alphabet soup.
I know exactly. And we bounce rate, email open rates,
But if I'm doing it now, back to one of our earlier videos. If you haven't watched it, go watch the one on strategy versus tactic.
Yeah.
If you have a website and you're measuring bounce rate, but your primary method of marketing is relationship driven, may not be the best one to choose.
No.
How do I cut through all the noise, AJ? What do I need to do?
So with KPIs, I'm a massive believer in setting two types of KPIs, so channel specific KPIs and overarching KPIs. And for the most part, actually, overarching KPIs are good enough to get you started. And if you're not used to using KPIs, setting overarching KPIs is the best thing you can do for yourself, because it gets you into the habit of monitoring and tracking outcomes that you are working towards. And then over time, you can then extrapolate and you can then add more, etc. But if you try and do everything at once, you'll measure nothing and you'll get nowhere. And so for me, yes. And so for me, the overarching ones that you want to pick could be like daily traffic numbers for your website, right? It could be, especially if you're especially if you watch your numbers out. So to over X amount per year, we need to be doing X amount of orders per day. An average order, our average conversion rate is X percentage, and therefore, right? And so we know if we get to that level of traffic, everything else should take care of itself. Obviously, in practice, that doesn't work out, but in theory, that at least guides our action steps and our behavior towards hitting that goal. And so for me, it could be daily revenue, it could be daily traffic numbers, it could be return rate, right? As in people returning items. I've got a client at the moment who has a KPI for customer ticket answering, because until he was working with me, his average answering time was, you're gonna love this, was about 4 months and 38 days.
I'm sorry. Somebody sent an email and it took 4 months and 13 days to get back in touch.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
That's a little different than my metric.
Yeah.
Even as a customer.
Exactly. He's now down to about 14 hours average across the 7-day period, which if you consider he's open for 2 days a week, that isn't as bad as it, and that's a rolling 30-day average. He's doing way better. He's not where we need to be, but he's doing way better than before.
I love it. And these are important. We've talked a couple of different times about some of these different metrics, and I love how you just segmented it to channel versus overarching. That's a nice way to look about it. And then I wonder, okay, so for example, we used to do a lot of, I keep calling them Facebook. I know I should probably call them Meta, but we used to do a lot of Facebook ads. That was one of the ways that we got customers in.
Yeah.
And so would you, aside from the fact that we had overarching metrics to use,
Cool.
and then of course we had ad spend specific metrics to use. So for those who are listening, with the ROAS, return on ad spend.
Yep.
But every time we did a campaign, sometimes we would have is this campaign going to be successful? Yes or no? And how am I going to know at the end of the day that it is successful? My target is metric X.
Yeah.
Would you also suggest, aside from looking at channel specific, that we get a little more tactical and say, if we're launching a specific campaign, this is what you need to do? There's another metric there.
So yes, absolutely you can. But also, I don't want to preach granularity to people that don't understand. That don't understand metrics. And what I mean, and that sounds really condescending, and I'm not trying to be. So I've dealt with enough customers in the last 3-4 years that I've been doing consulting, where I had this hilarious question. I say, so when was the last time you looked at analytics, right? Google Analytics, and all of them say, 4 months ago. And how was that experience for you, right?
It was so good. It was 4 months ago.
It was so good 4 months ago. And it's because they get bombarded with all these data points and they haven't found their North Star.
Yeah.
And so they immediately close it because they feel it's too complicated, it's too much, and they're going to have a cup of tea or a cup of coffee, right? And so having you're right, having outcomes for specific campaigns or specific tactical items that you're doing, yes, that can be very, very helpful. But at the end of the day, it also depends on what you're using that for. So if you're doing, say, like, so I give you a great example. I do an email out every Thursday. I do two, right? I do one to prospects and one to partners, right? And I've got a new client who came on a couple of months ago, and I said to her last Friday when we spoke, so now you got for a couple of weeks, what do you think? And she said, well, I'm confused about the purpose of it. And I said, the purpose is to get people to remember that we exist. If they read the newsletter, I'm over the moon. And they just think, he solves that problem, I need to go talk to him. Fantastic. I could not care less if they read it or they don't read it, right?
Yeah.
And her being her background is marketing, she was like, right, I now get it. And I said, yeah, I'm not trying to get that newsletter to bring me customers or for people to convert, right? And so I couldn't tell you how many people open the newsletter, couldn't tell you how many people unsubscribe each week, because I just don't care. It doesn't matter. Because I get enough people emailing me back every quarter, every 6 months saying, I love your email, or, I've been thinking about you because I get your email every week, and we're still thinking about how we can progress to where we're at the right size to work with you, right? And obviously that doesn't fit nicely into, and again, I'm a data person like you, that doesn't fit nicely into a nice data window.
Mm-hmm.
But I have to believe that I'm cultivating the right opportunities, and therefore some of this data doesn't have to matter, because the data does matter. I can track. So, like, leads coming into conversion rate, right? I can track that. And that's more meaningful being a small, agile business than trying to have like a mailing list of 4,000-5,000 people.
And I would ask this question as well.
Please.
So initially you might have a set of numbers for a goal.
Yeah.
But over time, the objective for the activity might change. Or now you have a critical mass where your measurement will be something different. So case in point. So we are referral based for our business. And so I like to, my metric for myself is to make sure, and I did this a long time ago, I'm speaking to 5 new people every week. So originally that was my metric. It was 5 a week. It's not because there were 5 days in a week. It was just 5, randomly pulled it out of the air. Now we got enough critical mass. Now, though, it's staying in touch. But the point of speaking to these people is truly to move the ball forward from a number of different perspectives. So one of the metrics, 5 is now just a number that I just do because it's great and it's my habit.
It happens.
But the point is actually to meet have those people, have us be top of mind when there's an owner that needs an operator. And so now it's a metric of, well, do I shift that? Do I move that over to the new metric would be, I don't know, 1 referral a week.
Yeah.
The point being, I've got to move the ball forward for the company, for the business, for the team, but it has shifted from the original activity, even though the original activity is still going on. It's absolutely still there.
Yes. So just sort of that point, and what I'm inferring is that I don't think enough people do. I can't think of a better way to put it than I think people imagine their KPIs are a tree. It's stuck in there. You can't move it. It's going to be disastrous, right? Does that make sense? Right?
Tree.
It's a tree. It's a tree.
Okay. But it is. It's a flagpole that you're stuck in. This is what it is. This is my message.
Yes.
Yes. Okay.
And rather than, I don't know, have you read Good to Great?
Oh, I love Good to Great. Jim Collins. Yeah.
That's why we get on. That's why we get on.
Too true.
In Good to Great, it talks about arguing for a greater sense of purpose, i.e., what you measured 6 months ago may not be relevant to where you're going now, and therefore, do we need to have a conversation around changing the metric, changing the KPIs that we're tracking, because actually that doesn't matter anymore.
Correct.
And actually, that's healthy because you're developing your system and you're developing you're rebalancing internally around the new sets of ideas, new sets of ideologies that is actually going to be more helpful for you than sticking to something that isn't serving your ultimate outcome.
Yeah, and super true. That's so important to do. There might be a point in time at which a stack of metrics, the overarching, not the channel specific ones, but the overarching metrics become more static for longer.
Yeah.
But I don't think that's anywhere in the 7 and 8 figure range when of business size. I think there's still a lot to be learned and a lot to refine from a systems and process perspective.
Yeah. But I'd also just say this, and you set your KPIs up in a way, especially your top level KPIs, that they're lower than what you're currently hitting as an average, right? So that you get momentum. So you go, okay, right, this month we hit our KPI 20 times out of 30, right? And therefore we can just adjust up 10%. And rather than having it set so high, because that's the ultimate number that you want to hit, and then you're constantly failing, you're constantly procrastinating or trying to phone it in, right? And as you start to hit more and more numbers, you can start to up your KPIs, you can start to readjust, you can start to question yourself whether they're the right KPIs to optimize for, but you can kind of delude yourself into believing that you're making more progress than you are because of how you set your KPIs up. And actually, to me, that's a healthy thing. Going back a couple of years, we talked about a client of mine who I realized they need to be doing about 30,000 hits a month to be doing about 500,000 in turnover, right? For them, their first KPI could be, right, are we hitting 5K consistently? Because at the moment, they may not be, right? Once they're doing 5K consistently, right, can we get to 7.5K? Oh, that's a bit of a stretch. All that feels a bit uncomfortable, right? Because the next KPI after that would be 15, right? Yeah, so on and so forth, right? But it's about setting your KPI so you can build momentum, you can get comfortable, and then you move the goalpost just slightly so that it becomes uncomfortable again. But it's still not so far that you feel that you have to jump the space station back.
Exactly. I love you. So it is true though, and it's a big conversation about where to put the goalpost, because it's not just, so I know I'm putting my COO hat on, it's not just, hey, I have a metric and I'm going to track something. You have to have a goal and a time period and somebody who's responsible for that particular metric and accountable for that, not just responsible for putting the little number on the sheet, because that's not helpful to move. That's the what. We are going to the now what. Now you have the number. What are we going to do about that? Is that a good number, a bad number, whatever it is? And there's lots of different reasons and theories to have it be a bigger number, a littler number. And so I love that you talked about the mentality that, you're looking for a mentality of success when you're
Yes.
setting out your first KPIs.
Yes. Yes.
Nice.
But it's also, and I don't know, I love talking analogies. It's also the building a snowball up a hill. You start off with this little thing and you get momentum because you can see it growing. And then when you get to the top of the hill and you finally push it over and it goes whoops down the other side.
Yeah.
You don't start thinking that at the bottom of the hill, oh, we're gonna have this massive snowball in a minute. You think, right, it's gathering ground, it's gathering momentum, it's getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and how impressive does it look? And then you have this fun release right at the end. And so for me, is that whole kind of like, again, I'm using the word deluded because I felt that's an illustrative word. It's not the correct word, but it's an illustrative word. But I feel if you can delude yourself into building momentum, however small it is, that then drives you further and faster.
Yeah.
And therefore it becomes really, really important. And that's why I think, don't get stuck into too many data points or too many KPIs or too many flashing lights, but pick what the North Star is and then reevaluate each quarter, every month if you need to, whether they're the right metrics to be measuring based on what you've experienced in the last 6, 7 weeks, 8 weeks,
Which is great.
3 months. Yeah.
And it's important to do.
Mm-hmm.
It's not just one and done and hey, I got my KPI. I've checked that box
Yep.
forever.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
AJ, thank you for the help. I appreciate that. We are going to come back and talk to you again about marketing's role in business profitability, which is, I love that topic.
Yes.
So we're going to go through that.
I love making money. Yes. Yes.
Most business owners do.